All right, let's see if this is working. All right, let's see if this is working. Let's see here. I need to be able to. All right. Let's play some, just in case.
What is music? Music is what your mind and body demands. Music is a sound.
Make sure all the recording's working real quick before I go full board. Invite them in.
What is music?
All right, looks like everything's working. I say we go for it. Alrighty, so this started out with me saying, me kind of laughing at this. So I'll probably just read this to Craig and invite him in and see what happens. But I wanted to kind of start here. So let's go ahead and invite him in. Hello, can you hear me?
Hello.
Hey, Craig, can you hear me?
I can.
Hey, pleasure to chat with you. My name's Michael Tidwell. So I run a fairly, I'm an up and coming, successful podcaster. Not famous yet, but I'm getting there.
Not a problem. I see you've got a weird sort of organic chemistry ring.
How do you like it?
I can understand the CH3 and the HO, but I'm not sure where BCH ETH and whatever else fit in.
It's kind of like inspired by that one picture you have where you're like writing on like a transparent whiteboard kind of, and it's like your classic photo that looks really cool. So I just want to bring a little bit of inspiration. It doesn't really mean anything, but hey, there's some Easter eggs in there if you find them. So yeah, thanks for doing the interview. Nice suits of armor in the background, by the way. And
thank you.
And I kind of wanted to explore the meme that is Craig Wright, who he really is. I want to discuss a little bit of Bitcoin versus Bitcoin Cash, and then maybe
Bitcoin Core versus Cash.
Yes, exactly. Bitcoin Core versus Bitcoin Cash, and then a little bit about your origin, because I think that's also very fascinating. So I'm not really sure how much time.
Well, when a man meets a woman and they love each other, then 9 months later.
There you go. So first things first, I'm going to read you what. Apparently Peter Todd ticked your nerve, so let me just read this real quick. This is it. Screw you, Toddler. I'm going to undelete my writings. You want competition? Screw you. I'm going full billionaire mode. You want this? You get it. You asked for this. You will not like what is coming. You think I cannot choose what I prove to whom? Watch. So to me, this was an awesome tweet. Now, I'm not sure if this was serious or kind of tongue-in-cheek, or you're just having kind of fun with it, because to me this looks like playful banter.
Why can't it be everything at once?
Okay.
Why can't it be serious and fun?
Sure. So what do you mean, what does it mean to go full billionaire mode on someone? Maybe we can start there.
I'm sick of hiding out and being silly, and Enchain's going to start coming out more into the open. We're going to start more partnerships and doing much more. We've started partnerships with software development firms now, so that was part of Kriya and that last night. We'll be doing lots more of these sort of things, and growing the ecosystem. But outgrowing the ecosystem won't be growing Bitcoin Core's ecosystem.
Okay, so I have several questions for you, and I also have a live chat going if you want to take questions from the live chat as well later after this.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, so now hold on. Let's go right back to that tweet that we kind of discussed real quick though. What are you going to necessarily do? What is full billionaire mode, if you can explain that?
Well, it means I've got resources.
Okay.
Not sitting there waiting. And I mean, myself, the company, we're going to start escalating things. So everyone knows I've been inventing intellectual property. They have no idea what we've been doing. Some of those relationships we're going to start building on. We're going to start releasing more of the SDK, more of the threshold systems. I'm going to have a bit of fun and tweet my holiday and a few things like that people are going to sort of go, oh, bullshit, and whatever at first, and enjoying a little bit of time with family. And actually, Jimmy's coming along with me and his partner. So we're going to have
Jimmy?
a bit of Jimmy Wynn.
Oh, Jimmy Wynn. Okay.
So we're friends. He might be CEO, but that doesn't mean I have to hate him.
Sure.
Sure. So yeah, we're going to float around the Greek islands for a little bit and annoy the buggery out of people in my sort of holiday break bit. Just me, the family, and a few math books.
So,
yep, keep going.
So maybe we can start with BTC versus BCH, because I think that's a fair way to describe both projects as far as acronyms, right?
Yep, Bitcoin Core and Bitcoin Cash, both forked from the original Bitcoin, and one will win.
Okay, so can we really quickly explain why the fork and what projects do what better, if any, on the other side? Because I know you're more of a Bitcoin Cash kind of guy.
Because Bitcoin settles on chain. That's what blockchain is. This bullshit about wanting to create Bankcoin and Lightning and whatever else doesn't work. Now, there's this myth that you own a public key and thus you're totally secure and the law can't catch you. Now, if you have a negotiable instrument, which is cash or something similar, which is on-chain Bitcoin, then, and you're a merchant and you receive money that has been purloined from a stolen account or from a bank that's been broken into or something like this, then as a negotiable instrument and money, then you're safe. They can't return it. Not like a Visa card that they can take back 60 days later, that money that was stolen. But here's the thing. This is what Lightning does wrong. Lightning doesn't settle. That means that by law, as I've been posting, is not a negotiable instrument.
So
that means...
What do you mean it doesn't settle? If I don't like my my Lightning
your channel's open.
Yeah, but I can still close my channel, right?
But until you do, until you actually fully settle on chain, it is not closed.
Agreed. I agree with that. But isn't there like more like half-signed cryptographic proofs where it's like you're pretty sure that
it's irrelevant?
It's irrelevant.
Under the law, going back to 1892 and House of Lords here in Britain, which also is good law in the US, following some dicta and cases there, you will find that if you haven't had delivery, which is full settlement, then basically it is not a negotiable instrument. And if it's not a negotiable instrument, that means the government has the right at that point for recovery. You can say, oh, I want to get money back and I'll close my channel. Too bad. The point is, they can issue a notice before you close And if you get that money into your account, unlike Bitcoin, where it is yours, the law says that the police, the tax office, the whatever, can come and actually require you to hand over that money. Now, you can sit there and say, I don't want to hand over my money. This is my set of keys. And a guy with a funny wig, in America they got rid of the funny wigs, but luckily, but some guy with a funny wig here in Britain can basically order you to do so. And if you don't, then that's a contempt of court. It's not like a password or cryptographic key. It is money. And they can order you to hand over money that hasn't settled. And worse, if you don't, they can actually come and sell other assets. This is the lie that people are trying to propagate about you own your keys, you're safe. You're not. This guy with a funny wig can order your house sold to recover those keys you won't give over.
Don't you have like pretty good deniability that you own keys though, if you really wanted to?
If you're a merchant and you try and do that, then that's actually a crime.
Okay, I guess maybe I'm talking more about the individual then, because it's almost like to subpoena someone for, you know, to prove like, hey, prove that you're this person. I can just say it's not me. They're just trying to act like they're me, or something.
Then if you do that, you can not answer, but if you say it's not me, and it is you, then that's actually perjury.
Sure. Okay.
In Australian and British law, perjury is up to 20 years in jail. It's actually considered worse than beating someone half to death.
Is that why
judges don't?
Is that why you
don't like anybody?
Is that one of the reasons why you got the hell out of Australia? I know you're in you're in England.
I got the hell out of Australia. Right? Oh, I mean, this is the funny bit. I moved to England in October 2015. So that big, he's fleeing in December. I was actually moved out a few months beforehand. So, and the plan was actually 6 months before that. So we moved the company because it's actually easier here. The regulation here is easier. We got sick of all the battles that we had with government. So yes, we moved because of that. But being doxxed and having a whole lot of problems was a big stunt that was pulled in December after I'd already left the country.
Oh, okay. And that was right when you came out saying that, I kind of want to leave this for later on. I don't really want to hit on the Satoshi stuff this early because I'm more interested in some other conversation first. But that's when they raided your place, that's when you came out saying that you're part of the early group of, you know, Satoshi or the group or the alias or whatever, right? No.
Once again, I was not saying anything in December 2015. Other people said that.
Oh, all right. I guess it was alluded that you were part of the group of Satoshi or whatever.
That was wide and everything like this. So I was put in a position where a day before this, I had no idea of anything. And the next thing I figure out, I've got all these journalists and media people sitting there wanting to know everything about my life. Now, that might be of interest to some people, but it wasn't to me, and it wasn't something I expected. At the same time, I have everyone calling me out as a fraud because of a whole lot of made-up bullshit. I mean, people going, it can't be true that he has all these degrees, it has to be a joke, it has to be a fraud, and yes, I did. So the fact that I don't want to, I did my one little thing with a wheelbarrow, and I don't want to jump around and run around and go, look, I've got another degree.
So
I just finished my last year and I've started another 2. So happy everyone.
I have to say, I actually watched that wheelbarrow thing and I couldn't stop laughing. The fact that you were prepared with a wheelbarrow full of diplomas, that was hilarious. That was one of the funniest things I've ever seen in the Bitcoin space. That was, I mean, did you know that you were going to get kind of assaulted with your credentials? Is that how you're prepared with the wheelbarrow? The lady, nice young, pretty lady coming out with a wheelbarrow full of Craig Wright's diplomas. I could not stop laughing. That was the funniest thing I've ever seen in Bitcoin. Okay, so
I knew the person. I knew the person who was going to ask me questions, and we'd been told about who the other person on stage was, and already knew that he'd been going out there, running around, going all these degrees are fake, all whatever else. So easy to check these things. So we made it into a little stunt at the same time, just to bury that finally.
So right now you have I think it's like a PhD in philosophy, and then you said you're pursuing a couple other PhDs. Is that correct?
I've got a doctorate in theology, which is a professional degree in theology, and I've got a PhD in computer science / economics, and I'm enrolled. So both of those are finished, and I'm enrolled at the moment concurrently in Leicester, where I'm doing a Doctor of Law, which is a professional doctorate, not a PhD in law. It's equivalent to a PhD, but different focus, and simultaneously a PhD in applied mathematics at CNAM, which is in Paris.
Okay, so you're early. Let's talk maybe a little bit about the origin of Craig Wright. It seems like you really came out of nowhere. But you know, obviously you've been doing stuff before Bitcoin and stuff like that. What were your first interests? Can you give us like a 5-minute backstory of who you were? You grew up in Australia, is that correct?
I grew up in Australia. I started in Brisbane, moved down to Sydney. I worked in the early ISP industry, as well as for Corporate Express and then Staples. I ran the IT department and also the warehouse there. Then I worked, well, for the Australian Prime Minister in a way. I worked for Aussie Mail, and at the time, before he was quite so rich, Malcolm Turnbull was one of the directors and founders of Aussie Mail. So I remember many little battles with Aussie Mail people. And then I moved on to Australian Stock Exchange, where I ran security for there until I left, started my own company, and contracted back to them, and basically did the same job except for more money. From there, picked up a lot of gaming clients. I helped set up Lassiter's online casino. They were the first licensed casino globally. Because of Lassiter's, I picked up a lot of other gaming clients. Probably the most fun for a while was Playboy Casino.
There you go.
Also a bit, yeah, I know. That was interesting. They had interesting parties, I'll say that much.
You seem to be one that gets invited to the awesome parties, from what I've seen on your Twitter.
Oh, one or two.
Yeah, like nice boat parties and such. That was oh, did we lose him? Hey, Craig, we lost you for a second. I just said it seems like you get invited to nice parties and stuff like that too.
One or two.
Yeah.
I don't mind them. I'm Australian, so I can drink pretty well.
So, when I first learned about you, you were up on stage and you're actually remote, and you're up on I think with Bitcoin Belle, and she was introducing you, and she was adamant that you were Satoshi Nakamoto. What led her to believe that? Because I know I've met Belle a couple times in person. She's adamant that you're Satoshi. What makes her believe that? I'm just curious.
I'd talked to her about a few things, and she I had someone else who worked for me, and the two of them knew each other quite well before they had a falling out in a big fight. But I've got a lot of qualifications. I've got a lot of knowledge. I was working. I had a company in Australia that was heavily researching Bitcoin. In 2013, we had 45 staff there in Australia. No one actually knew what we were doing, other than being in a lot of trouble every now and again with ASIC and others trying to actually get a banking license so that we could do a whole lot of things
We're-
directly with Bitcoin.
You're saying this was in Australia, like what year or whatever?
2017.
Okay. Now, were you actually, you're mining in Australia, or what were you doing as far as your companies in Australia?
I haven't. I mean, Nchain now has a mining affiliate, and that's so that we can vote more than anything else. But I was mining between 2009 and 2011. After that, I haven't mined anymore.
Okay. So you're in early mining and whatnot. So I mean, but by definition, you're not necessarily playing the Satoshi card saying I was mining back in 2009, right? You're maybe stepping back from that, or
I'm not going to do anything. Confirm, deny, whatever else. That's your bad luck if you want to prove it.
No.
I'm not going to make anyone's life easy there. I don't need to. I don't see any benefit out of any of this. So, yeah, I mean, I've thought through this quite a lot. And at the end of the day, the only benefit anyone gets out of any of this is a whole lot of media people and clickbait and whatever else. And
sure, you can't blame me for
and
trying, right?
2009 goes won't go to the grave with me, but it will go a long way away from now. So,
well, we'll leave those questions aside then. We'll talk about some other interesting stuff. How about that?
Mm-hmm.
So,
not a problem.
yeah, because I kind of want to figure out your thoughts on a bunch of different kind of projects since I have you here. I want to kind of go. I was a little bit unorganized when we first started. I was really busy doing something, but I want to kind of go back to why we first got into this conversation, because you seemed real open to, which I appreciate, open to do this, and I kind of want to explore, like I said earlier, like kind of like the meme, the fun Craig Wright, the playful Craig Wright, and how much of this is serious and how much of this is playful, or is it some kind of combination of both? This is just your personality. I almost see you as like this funny, brash, omnipotent kind of, billionaire mode kind of guy, and maybe we can start there. What does it mean when you go full billionaire mode? Is it just a playful threat? Is it I'm just being funny? Maybe we can talk about maybe we can talk about the meme, not the serious one, but maybe some kind of combination. The meme that is Craig Wright, because you're building a playful, in my opinion, playful personality on Twitter, or maybe you're being serious. I don't know. You tell me.
Why can't I do both? Once again, I can do both. I don't mind doing both.
Well, So what does it mean though to go full billionaire mode on someone? That actually kind of sounds like a threat, or is it like a playful banter? What would you call it? It's the most hilarious thing. It's the most hilarious term.
I'm going to start having fun. I'm going to start bringing stuff out in the open. I'm going to start competing properly with them. And let's just put it this way. Mr. Toddler there could have invested heavily in Bitcoin and held some and actually been worth something. But none of these guys who like to call themselves Bitcoin supporters actually really held much Bitcoin.
Did you just call him Toddler Dick? Wait, what did you just call him?
I just called him Toddler.
Oh, okay, never mind. Sorry, I didn't hear it. Okay, so where'd you get that from? Toddler? Is that something you made up, or?
Yeah, I did.
That's okay. Have you and Peter Todd have any kind of past? So, because I didn't necessarily see him as coming at you, but then again, I didn't read the whole history of the tweets and stuff. What was that story necessarily?
Not that they like to admit it, but if I hadn't deleted my Twitter from 2013, I had engagement with Mr. Back, and I had engagement with Peter Todd and whatever else and all these things. And I tried to talk to him about a number of things, and they just called me a bloody Bitcoin Maximalist and a whole lot of other silly things at the time.
They called you a Bitcoin Maximalist in 2013?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I would almost...
These other projects. I mean, Litecoin I thought was stupid back then. It still is. All these other things that they wanted to do were stupid back then, and they still are.
Let's talk about some of the Bitcoin core guys. I mean, I see them as pretty competent, some of the most competent developers in the blockchain space. People like Greg Maxwell and Peter Woolley. What do you think about those kind of guys? Even people like Adam Back. Are they? Would you say they're top of the line kind of developers, or middle of the road, or irrelevant? What's your opinions on that?
I don't know if they'd be hired to make the coffee in the Australian Stock Exchange.
What do you think of them as Bitcoin developers, or Bitcoin core developers, as you were putting it earlier?
I think they're fucking horrible developers. I'm a shitty developer at times. I don't code with good structure. I mean, I was mainly I pulled apart code a lot. I mean, I did statistical software. I did some libraries, and I'm terrible in that. My comments are horrible, and I mash things when I'm doing it, and it's not structured very well. But I'm sorry, but Luke Jr. is horrible as a coder. He's worse than I am, and that's not saying much. I mean,
oh man, that's hilarious.
I mean, don't worry. I put up weekly from Shatters, Steve Shatters, who we poached and now works for us. One of the early guys behind some of the mining software and like pool software, and he gives me shit about my code weekly, at least weekly. He's a good developer, and we've got other guys who are excellent developers. And I remember from my gambling days, working at a number of gambling organizations, they had excellent developers. The reason was there was real money at stake. The Australian Stock Exchange, for as much bitching at some of the code you did, it was structured, it was actually well defined, it was good code. Gavin,
I'm sorry,
I think he
say
pulled out
that one more time. You said Gavin? You said you pulled out more code than you put in? Gavin Andreessen?
Yeah. Yep, which is a good thing, by the way, and I think Mike actually did as well. Actually taking out bad code and making it tight is a good thing, by the way.
Okay. So let's see. There's a lot of different ways. I wrote some notes briefly to kind of try to stay organized, but like I said, I didn't have a lot of time to prepare just before. I do want to ask maybe some of your current developments at nChain. Now I remember I watched the video about 5 months ago, and you're saying you know, we have all these patents that we're working on. I'm guessing you have a group of developers that you've hired, and you're working on some pretty cool stuff. And I'm guessing the patents are going to be under nChain, and you want to bring that into Bitcoin Cash, okay?
Yes.
Now, what would stop? Now, first, maybe we can talk a little bit about the patent stuff, if you whatever you can say about that. What kind of patents and what kind of things will this enable? One. And then two, what would stop a project like Bitcoin, or Bitcoin Core as you're putting it, from just taking those advanced features that you might come up with and just implementing them in Bitcoin? Or is that not necessarily an issue? Maybe you can comment on that.
It wouldn't stop someone putting them into an open source project, and we wouldn't go after the individuals. What it would stop is exchanges being able to run it.
Okay, so like legal institutions.
Yeah. So you'd be able to go back to the world that some of the core guys want, where no big exchanges, no Coinbase, no institutional investors touch Bitcoin Core.
So what?
If that's what you want, then go for it.
So what's some of the really cool stuff that you can comment on that nChain's working on? Because I know you've been working on these things for a month now. Has anything actually made it in? Because say again.
Month, much more than a month.
Sure. How long have you been working on some really cool features for Bitcoin Cash?
Well, it was originally features for Bitcoin, but unfortunately, these fools wouldn't scale, and well, that was their choice. So, okay, so threshold technologies that enables us to effectively have control of our while also not having to worry about theft. That could be everything from having distributed devices yourself. I can have a backup device and my other device and an exchange. And we can take that further than just pure thresholding with blinded thresholds. So you could have, imagine Coinbase, imagine they can check who you are, all this other stuff, earn money, but under safe harbor provisions, they're protected themselves because they don't know anything about your identity. So what that would enable would be a secure system like Coinbase that can act as a web wallet but don't even know what your address is.
So what's a blinded threshold? Is that just not knowing limits on amounts of Bitcoin? What does that mean?
So imagine you're Coinbase.
Okay.
And I'm a customer. We each have a part of the keys. So together, myself and one other person or two other people are in control of a single key. We can issue a request to you, and you can now basically do a blind signing where you don't know what you've signed, hand it back to us, we can now unblind that, and now we have a transaction that even though you're protecting our keys, you're acting like a simple web wallet like Coinbase or something like that, you don't know what you've actually signed.
Okay. So that's the blinded threshold that you're explaining.
Yes.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So what's one of the cool things that you want to put into Bitcoin Cash? What's one of the greatest like patent things that you're talking about?
Oh.
That you can talk about. No.
Being able to link securely distributed hash table type files, to have peer shared files that link to transactions on the blockchain, to be able to have encrypted files that are individually encrypted to the user, that if you then distribute to someone else, that you actually decrypt your identity and your keys. So if you buy a movie from me, you either keep the movie safe yourself, or if you're sharing it with other people outside of what you're allowed to do, then you also share your private keys. The ability to tokenize, so not just silly ERC20 tokens, but full financial instruments, common shares with voting rights, common shares with dividends, bonds with coupons, the ability to vote. So we're talking via oblivious transfers, voting at not only small company level, which is the initial, but being able to scale up to having national elections that the government can provably say that they've issued the tokens to an individual, and that individual can then vote as they will, but the government has no way of other than counting the vote, which is public, determining who voted where. Many things.
What do you think about the proof of existence use case? It sounds like some of that could be used in some of the ideas that you're throwing out. The idea of just hashing data and then having a pointer to where it is on the blockchain through like a Merkle root. What do you think about those kind of use cases?
So where I talked about linking distributed hash tables and peer file shares, that would be the same sort of thing.
Okay. All right. That's what it sounded like. I was just curious if that was indeed what it was. Is there anything else you'd like to say about N-Chain or what you're working on?
we're starting to become public and come out of the shadows, so everyone's going to see very shortly much of what we're doing. We are working on a node implementation, which will be a full microservices architecture node, which I started years ago. The idea there with what we call Terranode is to be able to scale to 50 million transactions per second, to enable not just a big monolithic node structure, but allow companies to take the parts they want, whether it's a UTXO set or whatever else, and then to enable anyone to try and replace parts of the node. For instance, the database used at the moment is horrible. The else in there that's actually efficient and scales.
So let's talk a little. Well, there's a couple. You've sparked a couple questions in my mind. First off, when you said that you're going to be helping people, is that like when you went to, I can't remember which African country you went to, you're like, look, you're going to be using this technology. Is this the kind of technology that you're talking about? Like, as far as like, look, we're all going to be using this kind of stuff. Does that make sense? Like, is that what you're referring to? It's Bitcoin Cash, and it's going to be improvements on Bitcoin Cash.
Definitely. We're not going to be building other blockchains or anything like this. I was very annoyed in that country because I sat down with EOS people who were basically a bunch of scammers for the most part, if you ask me, sitting there saying what they can do and how they've raised $50 million out of this country and whatever else for a piece of shit solution that isn't even in existence yet. And there's no other way to put it. I mean, at that point, it hadn't even launched. And they'd taken $50 million from an African country for a promise. I mean, yes, they're great salespeople. And I mean, my solution is, and people look at me strangely, we were giving away some of this stuff. When you
give it away for free, maybe people won't value it, right?
Yes, I know. Oh, it's better because we had to pay a shitload of money for something that doesn't work. I know.
So what country was that again? Because I gotta say, Craig, that was one of the funniest things in Bitcoin I can ever remember. You coming in and saying, "I have more money than your whole country." That was a defining moment, like in the meme culture of Bitcoin. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was a little brash, a little funny. But this kind of takes me back to billionaire mode. To me, billionaire mode is doing whatever the fuck Craig Wright wants, I think, but I'm not sure.
Well, it's no good having fuck you money if you can't say fuck you.
So how was that received when you said that? I imagine they weren't too happy about it, but I imagine maybe some people were interested and took you very seriously. What was the reception after that?
Well, the fact that we're not trying to rip them off to the nth degree helped, and the fact that I'm donating to a lot of African countries money, education, whatever else helps. So unlike everyone else, I'm not actually taking from these people, I'm giving to them, which sort of annoys me when people run around that way. But we're actually in talks at the moment to help build a African currency. So hopefully it all goes down well, and the people behind it sort of are able to handle what we want to do. But we want to actually build a currency on top of Bitcoin Cash as a token.
So would that be like a counterparty asset, or what would that look like?
That will be not a counterparty asset. It will be similar to the way that ERC20 works, except better.
So kind of like a hard fork in Bitcoin Cash to enable tokens, or is this possible without a hard fork in Bitcoin Cash?
We don't need a hard fork. No hard fork is necessary.
And you're talking about and you're talking about a token like ERC20 coin on Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, we're talking about the ability for banks and whatever else to issue a redeemable e-Rwanda or Eastern Africa currency block coin.
So I've always like considered geographic coins or industry specific coins to be kind of, you know, kind of weird, because if it really takes off, then other countries would want to use it, or under other industries. What would make you think that an African currency would be a good idea versus just using Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash, or, you know, Bitcoin Core?
Because it would be African currency.
Okay, so you're just talking about the market adoption would be easier because it would be for Africans by Africans? Is it kind of like the idea?
No, I'm talking it would be supported by a central bank and issued on Bitcoin Cash.
Oh, okay. So that's a different paradigm than I was thinking. Okay, gotcha.
So we're not talking tether with need to audit or anything like that. No one needs to audit central bank money because it's central bank money. You just devalue the currency in exchange.
So before we leave the Africa topic, you said there's like some charities or some projects that you're donating to. Did you want to give any shout outs to your favorites that you've been donating to as a quick plug?
I'll give a plug to Eat BCH. They're very good. I've given a little bit of money and I promise to give more to them. I still like the Khan Academy guys. I donate Bitcoin to those guys too. I like educational organizations, so Khan Academy is remarkable in what they've achieved.
Yep, okay. So one thing you mentioned a little bit ago was, I can't remember, you're saying like something like millions of transactions or something like high throughput kind of idea. With all those transactions that you're mentioning, and maybe you can rephrase like 15 million a second or something. I can't remember what you just said, but
I said 15.
15 a second?
50 million a second.
Oh, 50 million a second. Wow. So would all those be on chain? Would they be like kind of some kind of second layer solution? Can you describe what that would even look like?
That's why we're looking. That's why it's called a tera project and terabyte block. So the idea is to be able to send very, very large packets, to have a proper SPV built so that people don't need to sit there on the side and worry about wearing hats. Because the reality is, although Mike Hearn started with Bitcoin J, a proper sort of SPV wallet, the SPV wallets out there at the moment aren't real SPV. The idea is you should be querying nodes, and nodes should be commercial entities. They should be running something for profit. Miners are for profit.
So these terabyte idea blocks, would they be potentially mined every 10 minutes, or is this not even a good question? Like, that's not relevant to this idea.
That would be mined exactly the same as now.
Okay, but they would just be like 1 terabyte instead of like 32 megabytes or smaller. Okay,
yes.
So as far as like an increase in like potentially if you were to max out that, maybe this is a good question. Would this idea also support ongoing terabyte blocks every 10 minutes? Is that the idea, or maybe like a terabyte block like once a day or something?
Oh, whenever it happens. I mean, Visa doesn't have 60,000 transactions a second every day. Some days, around Black Friday, around Christmas, they have more than others. Okay,
and then there would probably be like a minimum fee to put data into it, so you wouldn't get like probably like a full block. Because if we're talking about at least a 1 Satoshi transaction fee per transaction, you know, you might not be able to get, let's see, I'm doing some quick back of the napkin math real quick. You know, we're talking 2.2 to 5 million transactions in a block if we're talking about a terabyte. And, you know, that's a lot of Satoshis. You know, we're talking about several Bitcoin per block and fees, even with the minimum. Or I don't know, like Are you afraid that if you maybe had a terabyte block, that validation and propagation time would just be kind of like very centralized? What's your ideas there?
This idea of centralized is just a word straight out of 1984. The reality is,
explain that, please. Yeah.
Network graph centrality has to do not with the number of nodes, but the number of connections between the nodes. That's why Bitcoin's a small world graph. So if you want to decentralize the network, what you do is you have more and more connectivity. So you incentivize people not to create blocks and hold them, but create blocks and get them to their neighbor. That's what Bitcoin is. It's not about building a block first. It is about getting your block to everyone first, so that they build on top of yours. That's the error everyone keeps making. You don't care about finding a block. You care that people know you found the block. See the distinction?
Sure. I guess my small mind, I'm still wrapping my head around, if you found a 1 terabyte block, just the idea of you're the one who finds it and you start propagating it, the idea that other people have to validate that before it, maybe it gives you a big advantage if you're the one who finds that block, even if everyone's playing by the rules.
Not really, because as you get transactions, you validate those transactions. And you want people, you're not going to, it's not this selfish mining bullshit. People have to find and validate your transaction and build on it.
Okay, so
you want people to build on your block.
So would you have an invalid block if you had a bunch of unpre-valid transactions? Like, let's say my mempool was different than your mempool. I'm the one who finds this big block, and then you have a bunch of, like, let's say thousands of, or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of these transactions that you actually didn't know about. I mean, that could happen, right? I mean, potentially, not likely,
really?
But potentially, right?
Yeah. I mean, then you download them, and you have a fast network.
Okay. I mean, I don't necessarily have the technical expertise to take that any further, but to me, it either one sounds incredible, or two sounds like an extraordinary claim that I would just have to wait and see, which is fine too. I'm guessing from your point of view. Like, I'm really excited to see projects like that work.
People don't need to run this stuff at home. They're not supposed to. When I talk about things like Xeon Phi cards, process signatures, and whatever else, this is home equipment. I mean, the reality is banks and organizations do this stuff, and people sitting going, we need to all run it at home, are the drain that is killing crypto.
So the whole idea of running your own node, because that's a big, if you want to call it the Bitcoin core community, they're really big on people running their own node and validating their own transactions with their node.
Yes, they are, and it's very, very socialist, and it's very, very stupid. Basically, they don't trust companies, they don't trust anything other than themselves, and that is going to be their end.
Interesting.
The reality is, if you have competing organizations, then forget this socialist BS about how all of them are going to collude together. Collusion doesn't work. It's a myth designed as an anti-capitalist thing to say, oh, big bad companies are going to do whatever else. The fact of the matter is, they don't. There has been no history of this ever happening successfully.
As far as like corporate collusion is what you're mentioning?
Yes, successful corporate collusion that actually causes monopolistic price increases. So if we go right back to Rockefeller Oil, the idea of his big monopoly causing problems was that the price by 98%. Not that he forced the price up, that he outcompeted people and made it too cheap. So see how this is flipped? So the original thing with monopolies is it's going to force other companies out of business because we can't afford to compete. Now it's going to force up the prices to consumers because I mean, it's just a bullshit argument after a bullshit argument.
Interesting.
And it's not even consistent. And that was the point. Rockefeller Oil actually, literally, not figuratively, cut the price of oil by 98%. That's how they competed.
Okay. Well, so would you also say monopolies don't exist?
No, government causes monopolies.
I mean, I can't necessarily disagree with you there. And I would say a lot of the, I guess the shiny knight on the hill is governments are there to prevent monopolies, but you're saying they're the reason
Only
for them.
governments create monopolies.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
And even when a single firm is the only one in the market, it can't charge monopoly prices. There's been a lot of econometric data on this one. And the thing is, anyone who ever decides to try and charge monopolistic prices without government regulation to protect them ends up basically going broke, because what happens is they invite their own competition. We had the perfect example of this even in a semi-protected market in Australia, where Ansett and Qantas were in a duopoly and tried to go into a competition scenario where they forced the prices up because they thought it should be able to have higher profitability. And all they did was bring in Virgin as a third airline, who then basically lowered all the prices and forced Ansett into bankruptcy.
So, and just curious, before we leave, like kind of like the block size stuff, what would you say ideally is the maximum number of transactions a person, maybe on average would need a year in the Bitcoin space? Are we looking at it doesn't matter as many as they want, or as long as they have
as many as they want to pay for?
Okay, because I think the way Bitcoin Core is approaching this is, as long as you can have several transactions a year to open and close Lightning channel, payment channels, then that will enable you to have your unlimited off-channel transactions. And maybe we can talk a little bit.
Once you start doing that, you don't actually need Bitcoin anymore, and you create a fractional reserve thing. I mean, if you actually start thinking about what they're talking about being able to have atomic swaps across chains and all this stuff. Lightning doesn't require Bitcoin. Once you get Lightning, you move into a proof of stake system that just removes the need for a blockchain. It becomes our old banking system. It's all they're doing. They're trying to replace the old banking system with banking system 2.0. That's Lightning.
All right. Let's see here. So let's talk a little bit more about Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and then we'll move to the juicy stuff and the opinionated stuff, and the more opinionated stuff, I guess you could say.
All my stuff's opinionated stuff.
I know. The juicy opinionated stuff, maybe. What do you think, as far as defining characteristics of Bitcoin? How would you describe that to someone?
It's an economic system that uses cryptographic primitives. Now, the way that it works is by using a probabilistic sort of determination of a reward to incentivize people to get a puzzle that secures a group of transactions out to all the other parties who are trying to secure the same transaction. It's a purely competitive and economic system that really takes the human greed and puts that to good use. So it's really taking human selfishness and the desire to actually make profit and find more and turning that into something that enables an open hard money.
So what do you think the killer use cases are for Bitcoin Core versus Bitcoin Cash? Do you think there are any use cases for Bitcoin Core? Like, for instance, if I did do a Lightning Network transaction with someone, I could essentially move Satoshis and Satoshis, you know, half-signed messages, where you might not be able to do that with Bitcoin Cash ever without some kind of Lightning network. Wouldn't you say that
actually, with a payment channel, I can offer you 100 trillionths of a Satoshi updates.
Sure, with a payment channel.
In Bitcoin Cash today.
Okay, can you explain how a payment channel in Bitcoin Cash works? Because I was unfamiliar.
So original payment channels, I won't go into all of the stuff because we haven't announced it yet, but we can actually, we don't need to worry about nullability or anything like that. We don't need to make all these silly fixes, but we can use some of the old technology like Lamport signatures and other such things to enable parties to safely exchange data.
Okay. Well, I guess we just have to wait and see for that stuff to come out, right?
You do. It's being built at the moment. Yeah.
But at the moment, would you say that Bitcoin, and sorry if I ever say Bitcoin, not Bitcoin Core, I'm referring to Bitcoin Core because I've been trained that way, right? But wouldn't you say that, you know, Bitcoin with its Lightning network
doesn't exist, but anyway. I know what people say, but a 1% chance of getting a $200 payment that exists on basically under 4% of the hubs and centralized is not existing.
Okay, so now
if you can't use it commercially, it doesn't exist.
Gotcha. So they have I know they have like preset limits that are pretty small during this beta period, I think is what they're calling it. But until it's proven, it's nothing. Is what you're pretty much saying.
I'm saying even it won't ever be proven.
So you doubt that it'll ever be useful large scale, right?
I could actually show you why, but I won't because I'm a prick.
Why? Wait a minute! No, you can't leave me hanging. Tell me why. I'm curious. I'm trying to learn here.
I will eventually. I'll actually put a marker on the blockchain and an op return when I get back and list the paper so that I can say, if you give me a reminder, so that I can say I've already done this and whatever else when I do put it out. But the fact of the matter is there's a major flaw that I'm not going to explain yet because I'm quite happy for them to waste their time.
Interesting. So pretty much there's a fundamental flaw in Lightning or off-chain transactions through payment channels. Is what you're saying?
No, two separate things. There's a fundamental flaw in Lightning.
Okay, but not payment channels.
You can have valid payment channels, yes.
Okay, so you're talking about hash time block contract payment channels. There's a flaw in that, right?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Well, there's
actually a few flaws in it, but anyway.
Now, and you're saying you're going to use like an op return with like a hash of like maybe a document or something that says like I knew about this in 2018, right?
Yep.
Okay, well that's interesting. If and that happens, I would love the reveal because it proves that you knew it, right? The more specific, the better with stuff like that. Anyways, all right. So let's go to killer use cases of Bitcoin. What do you think? Why would I use Bitcoin over Visa? And maybe we can talk a little bit about why you'd want to use
Bitcoin Core. If you're talking Bitcoin Core, you wouldn't.
So let's talk about both. Let's talk about Bitcoin Core and Bitcoin Cash. When would you use one over the other?
I'd use Bitcoin Core because I own some and I pay people down in it, and I'd rather use it than Bitcoin Cash. Not because I don't want Bitcoin Cash to go up in value, but I sell Bitcoin Core and then buy back sometimes Bitcoin Cash. Or I sell Bitcoin Core bit by bit to pay for certain things. My preference is still using Bitcoin, as in Bitcoin Cash, as much as possible. But if I've got a large payment, then I'm happy to dump a bit of Bitcoin Core every now and again. On the other hand, I use Bitcoin Cash for everything that I can anyway.
Now, if you did want to get rid of your Bitcoin Core, you could donate it to Block Time. If you really despise it, we will take it off your hands for you.
I donate to charities that do educational things and feed people. So unless you're going to do something where you're educating a large number of people or feeding someone, and by large number of people I mean at least 1,000.
Cool. We'll hit 1,000 views on this, so we'll take your donation.
That's not what I mean. I mean, you get someone a high school diploma and we'll talk.
All right. I don't know what that means, but sounds good.
I mean, all right. So some of the guys in Sudan are putting together a proposal for me, and I'm going to fund feeding people while they're at school, so that they don't want to go off and run off and work, and getting them high school diplomas. And I've agreed to fund 2,000 people in Sudan. That's an idea of what I mean there. So taking 2,000 children who basically are working at the moment and can't feed themselves, and paying for them so that they can eat and go to school and get a high school diploma, that's education.
All right. Well, that sounds virtuous.
No, I'm an asshole and I want a world where there's smarter people.
Well, I like how you brought that back to a selfish point of view, because that's funny. You can play both sides of that, right?
Yep.
So we kind of talked about a little bit about the meme, which is Craig Wright, a little bit about Craig Wright, a little bit about what you're doing, a little bit about N-Chain, a little bit about your thoughts about Bitcoin versus Bitcoin Cash. Did you have any final thoughts to wrap up on Bitcoin versus Bitcoin Cash? Or sorry, Bitcoin Core and Bitcoin Cash? I know you have a preference on saying Bitcoin Core, so.
So if you're on Bitcoin Core, you can't even buy a coffee at the moment. You used to be able to, now you can't. I mean, I don't care what people say. The truth of the matter is no one wants to even pay 30 or 40 cents when it's not being used to buy coffee. Merchants won't accept it, and why? Why would I, the consumer, want to use something that is harder to use than my Visa card?
I mean, you can use your Visa card if you're using a company like BitPay.
But then I've got the fees.
Sure, but well, I mean that's interesting. I kind of want to talk to you maybe about the fees then. Now, for instance, whenever I send a Bitcoin transaction to someone, I'll usually do it 1 Satoshi per byte, and sometimes it doesn't clear right away. It could take several hours sometimes. It could actually take up 6 hours sometimes, depending on what the mempool looks like. Which is fine, because a lot of these transactions I'm sending aren't necessarily high priority. But if some are, then you would have to bump up to whatever the market rate is at near the top of the mempool, or 50% up or whatever. I mean, as far as like low fees and kind of just waiting for the mempool to die down, is that viable or?
Of course not. I mean, think of this at scale. All right, I like to point out one little commodity here in London, London gold. The number of trades on London gold a day are 300 megabyte blocks. That's what it will equate to. Sorry, 300 gigabyte blocks.
Sure, but there's only like by definition, like there's not everyone running that server. You're trusting a handful of people to run those servers and report, not leave out any transactions and yada yada, right?
Exactly, and that's the whole problem. That's what Bitcoin's designed to solve. We've been talking to the gold industry, and we can do this online. So why would we want to have some old, inefficient way of doing it when we can actually do this online? Instant. At the moment, they take 48 to 72 hours to clear.
Yeah,
10 minutes is...
But if you have a system like that, aren't we kind of going to that more of the idea of EOS? Like, why even if you have you know, maybe a handful of these people running the core infrastructure of Bitcoin, why not just go like an EOS model where, you know, you kind of have these trusted 21 people that run the network and they can be held accountable?
You don't have trusted 21 people. Bitcoin is not about home users. Home users do shit. Only miners right now do anything. This is the myth. You don't build on a block unless you mine. The only way you secure the network is to mine.
Sure.
Average time to send a transaction to a miner is fractions of a second. Average time for it to go round to Raspberry Pis on the edge of the network that don't mine is around 40 to 43 seconds. There has never been a single transaction blocked, stopped, filtered, anything on any Bitcoin network ever in the history of Bitcoin that wasn't a miner. Full stop.
All right. I mean, it's interesting.
Every single validated packet, every single blocked bad packet, every bad transaction, every attack, a miner. If you haven't been a miner, you have not done shit to the network ever.
So is there any point to validating your own transactions, or is it always
no.
Okay? Okay, gotcha.
That is absolutely asinine.
I think that's.
Think of it this way.
I think that's where the real big difference is between Bitcoin Core and Bitcoin Cash. Is Bitcoin?
Well, no, that's a misunderstanding of the system. Because if you validate your transaction, who gives a shit? Think of it this way: unless it's in that block over there, it's not your transaction, is it?
I mean, it's not confirmed. I don't know what you're asking. I'll be honest. If it's not in the block, it's not confirmed. If your
transaction isn't in a block, is not put into a block, if it's rejected by miners, and you accept it, so what?
Yeah, you'd have to wait for miners to mine it. Otherwise, it's just in Mempool, right? So Mempool isn't anything until it's... Oh, I mean, it's just... It's like a zero confirmation.
So, in other words, the only mempool that matters is a miner. You never get it into a block, do you?
I mean, you propagate it. I mean, if are you asking if I'm running a node?
That's the point. It's a small world network. No, you don't. You only propagate it to silly little Raspberry Pis that act as a mesh. You receive from miners. The network works this way. You send a transaction to multiple sources. It goes to a miner. The miners send it round to the rest of the network. You never, ever, ever send to a miner unless you're broadcasting your transaction.
Sure. And you have to get in their mempool.
Yeah, so you send a transaction, the miner gets it, other non-mining nodes get it.
So what would you say to people that, you know, I would call them the Bitcoin Core people, or maybe like the Jameson Lobs, who are really adamant about verifying your own transactions and all that for security reasons? What would you say to those kind of people?
I would just ignore them and say, stay away from people like that, because they've already drunk the Kool-Aid, and you know what happens when people drink the Kool-Aid. I know you're young, you won't remember the 70s, but those people who drank the Kool-Aid, they didn't turn out well.
I was born in 1999, so I'm
still learning. You know what drinking the Kool-Aid comes from?
The cults that killed everybody.
Yeah,
I think.
Cult who went over to Africa and did a mass suicide. Not all of them were suicides, because they put poison. They put cyanide in the Kool-Aid, and a whole lot of people died.
So you're equating Bitcoin Core, or you know, the original people, they've all drinking the Kool-Aid, and they're all like brainwashed, right?
Well, if you can't accept science, you can't accept data, you won't listen, then basically, if you're non-scientific, you may as well be a cult.
So
you call it about us if you want, except we've got data.
So as far as like my personal definition of Bitcoin, to me it's always been whatever has the most SHA-256 hash work provable in it. To me, that's just the definition, because that's how you declare the truth. Even if there's, and this is even if there's a
white paper.
Well, I was going to say, even if there's a hard fork, even if there's a hard fork and a change to Bitcoin, using the same hashing function kind of economically shows that this is the truth, in my opinion. Now, that's not everyone's opinion. To me, right now, Bitcoin Core is Bitcoin because it has more work on it, which I think is directly correlated to the market cap, because if there's more price per coin, there's more incentive for miners to mine it. What do you think? What do you think about that definition of the truth of Bitcoin? Like, so for instance, if Bitcoin Cash has more total work, then I would consider that to be the Bitcoin.
I don't really give a shit. The white paper says, the code says, and I'm sorry, it was put down and the protocol was stated to be set in stone, and a whole lot of other people want to go, it's ours now. Well, Steph fucking Bickies. You don't get to actually say that it's changed because you want to say it changes. If I have a horse and I want to call it a cow, I can do that, but it doesn't make it a cow.
I don't understand. Can we back up a little bit with the analogies? Or maybe we can just start with, what are the defining characteristics of Bitcoin? Like, what makes Bitcoin Bitcoin, and take it from there, maybe?
Economic model, on-chain, the protocol that was set to incentivize miners, the fact that it is designed to end up in a whole lot of big data centers, which was always said, the fact that it ends up with a few big nodes all competing in hyper competition in a capitalist system. That's Bitcoin.
Interesting.
Like it, hate it, don't care. What it does is it gives hard, fast, free money, and that's the real thing that matters. None of this other bullshit that a bunch of socialists want to say is actually Bitcoin.
Yeah, but I mean, kind of by definition, Bitcoin Core is a subset of what you define, so it still meets that criteria.
No, it doesn't. No, SegWit is not Bitcoin. The Lightning part is not Bitcoin. They're going to find out the hard way as judges and others start understanding it, which they are, that, well, you don't own your keys unless this is the truth. You can say, I won't give them over, and you can sit in court and you can complain to a judge and he can throw you into jail for contempt, and when you finally give them over, you get out of jail. Or he can just take your house as a judge. He can basically say, you won't hand them over, here's the value, bye-bye. And all these core guys can go, we're radical cyberpunk anarchists and it doesn't matter and we're going to ignore the law, and guess what? The law doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah, but I guess what I was coming at with, even with SegWit and off-chain transactions, you still have valid Bitcoin transactions. I mean, it's not like...
No. SegWit is not a valid Bitcoin transaction. It doesn't follow the definition in the white paper, and Luke and Toddler and others sitting there going, Satoshi was wrong and the white paper was wrong, doesn't mean fucking shit. If they don't like it, they can invent their own and go off and do something else, but it's not Bitcoin.
But what I'm saying, as far as a valid transaction, is literally a valid transaction. It's like SegWit's like a spin entity, right? And off. You said no?
Changing the protocol, making an altcoin and calling it Bitcoin, and saying that it's a valid protocol because you have different consensus rules doesn't make it Bitcoin. Ethereum has consensus rules too, and it has valid transactions, but it doesn't make them Bitcoin.
But I guess I'm not following your logic here, because a SegWit transaction doesn't necessarily change the protocol. It's a soft fork in, so it's just a spin.
No, soft forks are incendiary too. Soft forks were the biggest fucking clusterfuck ever invented in Bitcoin. They are not part of Bitcoin. They should never have been part of Bitcoin. They are insidious. People vote in Bitcoin. Hard forks are meant to happen. Here's the thing. There are 2016 blocks every 2 weeks, give or take because of probability. 5 orphans, there are 2016 valid blocks. If you have no orphans, there are 2016 blocks. If you have 10 orphans, there are 2016 blocks. This idea that hard forks, oh, it's terrible. If your transaction is valid and there's a hard fork and 10% of the network fork off, your transaction goes to the 90% and the 10%. And the 10% ends up failing because they end up out of consensus, and the 90% continue, and the 10% can either flip back and accept the change or disappear. Hard forks are an essential part of Bitcoin. If you don't hard fork, you ain't Bitcoin.
So, I mean, I don't think I disagree, because like I said earlier, my personal definition is the one just with the most work for SHA-256. So Bitcoin Cash is a contender in my personal definition to becoming Bitcoin. And believe me, I have nothing, I have no quorums against Bitcoin Cash at all. But to me,
the market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent. And that's a nice little quote from an economist I don't really like, but I believe he's correct in this one. And there's a reason for all of this. Markets take a long time to adjust. And sitting there going, the market at the moment, I don't really care. I work on decades. You think, today when I submit it, I will have paper 730 before I go on holiday tonight.
But you haven't really, sorry, finish, sorry.
You haven't really seen what the hell's happening.
Apparently not.
So, do you know what's happening with SBI?
Say it one more time.
Do you know what's happening with SBI?
SBI. I don't know what that is.
Big Japanese conglomerate, the ones we're partnered with.
Okay. Would you like to let me know? I don't know.
Nope, I wouldn't like to let you know.
Oh, okay. So,
but we have that partnership, and that's known. There's a certain bank over in Europe, big one. We have that partnership.
And is this an anonymous bank, or is this something that you would be willing to share?
I'm not. It'll share eventually, but you're not going to get it now.
Gotcha. You didn't want to break it on the Block Time podcast, the most up and coming podcast in the blockchain space. Are you sure you didn't want to have breaking news on this? I mean, this is a great outlet for you, Craig. So.
Oh, I'll give you something. So we talked about oblivious transfers, right? And I announced that at one of my conferences. We'll end up running that as a voting system.
Oblivious transfers.
Yes.
And that's going to be on Bitcoin Cash.
Yep.
Okay. So that's something we can look forward to.
And imagine what happens if we start small, say a mayoral election, and it works, and we roll out a country running Bitcoin Cash as a back end for voting.
I'll have to wait and see.
You will.
Yeah. But going back to Bitcoin Cash, you haven't necessarily, in my opinion, given me anything that's a defining characteristic that also couldn't be used by Bitcoin, because the way you've been defining Bitcoin are more ideas like we want to be able to hard fork. I don't necessarily think that Bitcoin wouldn't hard fork in case of crisis or emergency.
Well, no, only hard forks. Soft forks.
But by the definition of soft forks, you can't stop them. So it's not necessarily something.
Of course you
can. You can soft fork in Bitcoin Cash.
Soft forks are a BIP introduced, and not really. They should be a protocol change that actually causes a rejection on the network. Bitcoin was changed so that people would be enabled to actually do these stupid, at a certain point, slowly phase in type bullshit changes. that is not how Bitcoin was designed to work. This idea that we drop nodes was meant to be how Bitcoin works.
Yeah, but okay, maybe we'll just have to agree. Maybe we'll just have to agree to disagree, because to me, to me, the soft fork idea being enforced is more of a are miners willing to support it and treat this as valid rules of the project. If you have enough of the miners, I guess 51% or more, and relay nodes that are supporting it, then
no such thing as a relay node.
Okay, a node. Sure. If you have miners that decide to accept this soft fork, they can. But at any time, they don't have to. But it still follows. It still doesn't necessarily break anything. It's almost like a additional amendment that they can choose to follow. It still kind of follows your criteria for what the real Bitcoin is. No,
it doesn't actually. If you don't have a vote and you have a sort of on the side thing, you get into the problem of what Kenneth Arrow did in Arrow's Impossibility Theorem of sort of multiple consensus paths.
Sure. Yeah, and that's and then that's why I said my definition is the one with the most work, because that's ultimately what the truth is. So that's how you, in my opinion, that's how you solve the consensus problems, is just the chain with the most work. And if they want to follow these rules, they can. If they don't, they don't have to. And at any time, I guess they could revert and not use those rules. But it's the chain with the most work is the truth, which still fits your. I mean, everything you've described so far to me. I don't like. I'm looking for a defining characteristic that right now at this time makes Bitcoin Cash Bitcoin. Because right now, to me, Bitcoin Core is Bitcoin, not Bitcoin Cash. But I'm not saying Bitcoin Cash can't become Bitcoin later. With a market cap that's bigger, with more miners and stuff like that.
You assume I care short term.
Say again?
You assume I care short term.
Wait, I'm a short term what? I can't hear you.
I don't plan anything long, that isn't at least 10 years.
Sure. In 10 years, so in 10 years, if Bitcoin Cash for like a 4-year period has a bigger market cap, it's more likely that miners mine it. It's got more work on it. Yeah. Even though they had a hard fork, I would say that's still the more legitimate Bitcoin, because you've had more economic interest.
In which case, it was always Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's kind of, you're right. I do have like a logical fallacy on flipping what Bitcoin is when it isn't. But that's just, I guess that's just food for thought for. This is my opinion on it. So, for instance, if there's a contentious hard fork that happens at the tip, right? Then the real Bitcoin can change based on which one has more work and more valid work, depending on what you consider valid.
So we're not going to come to an agreement here, and okay. I'm not going to give you knowledge that I know.
Oh! And what did I come off too opinionated?
No, but okay. You just have to wait.
Sure. Well, let's we've been going at this for a while. Let's wrap it up, because there's some fun questions. I want to talk a little bit about the origin. See what you're willing to talk about. So when I first got introduced to you, it was right in the time of Gavin Andreessen, you meeting with him, Belle having you on that conference call where you're up on the big projector. First off, what made you decide to come out of the woodwork as a public figure in the Bitcoin space?
Well, I didn't at that point. I got nagged into doing a talk, which I finally said yes to, which was a big mistake in my opinion. But
okay, what? Who nagged you? Was it business partners? Was it your wife? Was it your friends?
No, my wife would have. My wife had said, "Don't do that," and whatever else. She did the other one, and I should have not ignored her. And yes, sorry, wife. I won't try and ignore you so much. But no, Bitcoin Belle did. A few other people in the Twitter sphere and a few other people I knew all nagged me, going, "You got to come on. We're going to have Nick Szabo. You got to talk." And I went, and yeah, eventually got me on there.
So, so you're saying, wait, sorry, Nick Szabo helped nag you in? I didn't catch that last part.
No. The others nagged me in, saying, "You got to have this talk with Nick Szabo. You got to help help him understand, and a whole lot of other things." So.
Okay. And I can't, I feel like we brought this up like 3 times now. I still have it on my list. What does it mean to go full billionaire mode on someone? Did we have a definition for that? I can't remember.
Well, start watching my vacation tomorrow.
Okay.
I grew up before you, so when I grew up, we had Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous and other crappy shows.
All right.
So we're going to have Twitter obnoxiousness of the rich and Bitcoin.
Sure. And earlier you seemed pretty critical of developers on Bitcoin, such as Luke Jr. What do you think about people like Greg and Peter Woolley? Some of the people I think are the most competent people in the space as far as development. What do you think about them? And then who would you say are the most competent developers in the blockchain space?
No one that you would hear of or know.
Interesting. So private developers that are not public figures that probably wish to remain anonymous. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And they're working on Bitcoin Cash?
And things to do with it, yes.
Okay. What's your go-to when people call you like Faketoshi and stuff like this? What's like? Are you just completely ignoring these kind of people, or do you try to challenge it?
Oh no, I consider that a win. Every time they do this, it means I can see and smell the fear, and I know that they're worried. You notice that no one gives a rat's about any other Faketoshi, so to speak. They only care about me. They don't care about I've signed a message by putting my name as Satoshi Nakamoto at the bottom of this stupid book that's come out. They don't care about Bali Satoshi and his crap, but they don't care about any of these other ones as long as it's not me.
Well, I think the reason they don't care about the other ones is because the other ones have clearly said, "I'm not Satoshi," where you're kind of like, I might be, Satoshi. I might not be. You know what I mean?
You mean Satoshi family COD that just came out the other day, or Phil Scronti there, or Satoshi from Bali, or I mean any of those?
Only heard about the Craig Wright one, I guess. The other ones aren't popular enough to hit my radar.
No, Wired had an article on the bullshit from the other day.
So, all right. What if we could? How did you reach out to Gavin, and what was that like? And I also remember you signing. You said, or at least the story is, I can't remember if it's block 1 that you use like a private key to like prove that you were part at least of the early group of the people in the space, or that you. Is there anything that you can say about that kind of stuff? Because that's, in my opinion, that's the most interesting thing. Is that you have this, either you have access to that private key, or you were truly part of the creation of this awesome tech.
And if I did, everyone will just go, "I stole it from Dave," and it won't show anything. So,
okay. I mean, that's
if I do anything with it, the best that we'll ever hope for is everyone will run around going, "Oh, he stole it from Dave."
Yeah, it's like you're damned if you do and damned if you don't, right?
Yeah.
Now,
so
what was that?
What do I gain out of it? I'm very capitalist, so what do I gain out of it? What do I get?
Sure. Now, apparently, was that block index 0, like the Genesis block, or is that block 1, like the one after
block
the Genesis? Okay, so it's the one right after the Genesis.
What people get wrong is block 0, Genesis, was actually not sort of, it was pre-formed. So what happened with the way Bitcoin was formed is on 1 week earlier, Genesis block was actually formed, and then the software was stopped and updated, and there was a new version put out and restarted, and block 1 followed the restart.
How is that possible? Because I thought the published date of the Genesis block also included January 3rd Newsline headline.
Yes, but if you redo it 7 days later or 6 days later, then that doesn't change, does it? It's only if you go back in time, not forward.
Okay, so you're saying it was actually published 7 days after the paper released?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Have a look at the blockchain. Have a look at the timestamps on the Genesis block and block 1.
So you're saying it would be like January 10th? Or January 11th or something. It would be a week after January 3rd.
It wasn't quite a week. It was about the 7th or 8th.
Oh, interesting.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, that's actually some good trivia, if that's the case. I didn't know that.
So have a look at the timestamp on block 0, Genesis block, which you'll find the Genesis block is actually hard-coded into the software. That's how it starts. It doesn't start. It's actually hard-coded. And the first block found is then when the software starts.
Alrighty. I'm going to ask you some softball questions real quick, and then I want to open it up to the audience. If they
I
want to
prefer
ask
baseball.
anything. Sounds good. I'll throw you some fast ones. What's your thoughts on side chains? Do you see that happening on Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash? Are you a fan of it, or just everything on main chain?
I think data can be stored but linked. I think the whole idea is stupid. All it does is allow the economic model to change by allowing you to keep spawning new versions of things.
And is Bitcoin car talk fake news?
I don't know much about Bitcoin car talk.
Okay, that's a pretty, it's a very, very good podcast. I would check it out if you had time. Just my 2 bits. What are your thoughts ultimately on the conclusion of the EOS project? Or do you think it's going to work in long term and stuff like that?
Long term was 3 months ago. It was a shitstorm. It's a bad idea made with a stupid idea in the. It's just. Sorry, Ian. It's stupid. It was stupid when I told you it was stupid. It's stupid now, and it's just getting stupider.
Were you involved with the transaction to Hal Finney, the first Bitcoin transaction?
Oh, come on. You know that I'm not going to answer that one.
Hey, I can try, man. Come on. I'm throwing in like some. I'm trying to trip you up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, you got to try, but I'm getting good at this.
What are your thoughts ultimately on the ETH project, Ethereum?
I think there's too much value to crash them, and we're working on a project now to do real atomic swaps. So I'm sorry, but hash time lock contracts, that's a load of bullocks. Atomic means it happens or it doesn't. Okay, so if you have to hash lock it, fuck off, you're not atomic. But we are going to actually have a linked system that will allow basically settling Ethereum in Bitcoin Cash, which means we can bring that into Bitcoin Cash and not crash Ethereum value and not cause problems to the whole space while still having a path forward.
What are your thoughts on permission blockchains, private blockchains? Do they have a place in the industry? Is this like maybe like a data ledger that's inspired by blockchain but maybe isn't doing mining, or do you think it just is stupid?
They have the same place as IPX-based intranets. They're there to have business people who like to run around going blockchain, 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 have something to talk about when they're drunk, and eventually they'll get bored with them and move on to something else.
What? How many rare Pepes do you own?
Only one.
Which one?
I don't know. It's a frog type thing. I don't really know. Someone sent me one.
Okay, and that's on Counterparty?
Yeah. I received a rare Pepe. I don't know. I have no idea why or anything more. It's just I've got some frog type thing.
Do you, because I know you talked about tokens on Bitcoin Cash, do you see any use currently right now for Counterparty?
I don't see any problem with them competing with different options we have. Personally, we're going to be allowing 3 or 4 different token schemes. We'll put most of our effort into one, but I want to see competition on top of the chain.
Okay, and finally, will there ever be a consensus model that is better than proof of work, such as proof of stake or something else? I know Cardano is trying to go like a purist route on proof of stake. What do you think the space looks like? You know, we're talking like 10, 20 years from now, maybe. Do you think proof of work is still going to be relevant?
Yes, I do. The only thing that will beat it will be economic in nature, and proof of stake is a shit show. For many reasons. All
right, Craig, I'm going to start asking you questions from the audience, if you don't mind. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we can take 10, 20, however many you want, and then we can wrap this up. First question from Digital Vagabond. How do you expect to keep the hold on patents based on decades-old prior art?
Well, if people were a little bit smarter, they'd actually understand how patents work. And the first thing you need to do in a patent is explain the prior art. So it's like when you do a thesis, you do a literature review. And if people were a little bit less, well, out there going anti-patent and whatever else, they'd learn how these things work. And I'd realize the reason we've got this through the patent examiners and we have a patent is it's not prior art.
Okay. So like digital signatures, Diffie-Hellman-based key generations, etc.?
The fact that we use a Diffie-Hellman technique in something doesn't mean that we're patenting Diffie-Hellman.
Okay.
So in the first part, you have prior art. So this is what people don't get. You have to read all 80 pages, or at least skip to the part that matters. So when you sit there and go, oh, he's saying Diffie-Hellman, well, guess what? That's called prior art. You explain what went before. This is how you do a patent. You explain all the components that you use to build what you have. And then you take that further.
What are your personal thoughts on Monero and Fluffy Pony?
I won't go into my personal thoughts on magical crypto pedo buddies or any of the others there. But Monero, again, developers who don't take the time to figure out economics and understand the legalities, the economics of a system, trying to fix problems that aren't problems and creating problems in the process.
Question from Mike Casey. What % of BCH to BTC do you hold? Obviously, I imagine you'd want to answer this one because it's just a ratio, right? It's not like the actual...
I own much more BCH now, but in ratio, they're still fairly close.
Okay, so you dumped a bunch of the BT, like if, I mean, yeah, that's interesting. One question I kind of forgot to ask you earlier, about 5 or 6 months ago when the mempool was congested and stuff like that, what do you think the cause for that was? Was it someone being malicious against Bitcoin? Was it just demand? Was it some kind of combination of both? What do you think?
If you're paying a fee, it's not damn well malicious. It's not spam if you're paying for it. There's bullshit that I keep hearing from the core guys. Oh, you're maliciously spamming the network. What? I'm using it? I mean, honestly, for fuck's sake, that's the whole point of a payment system. It's like going, you're maliciously going out there and using your £5 note. Don't do it. It will wear faster.
Good answer. Question from Richard Hart. Why did you unfollow Jihan Wu on Twitter?
I don't follow many people, and I followed him for a time because I was looking what he's doing, and I'm not looking what he's doing unless I want to go in there. So every now and again, Gavin retweets some of my stuff, but he doesn't follow me. I still look at, I don't want certain things in my feed. I add and remove people from time to time. Do I compete with Jihan? Yes. Do I like Jihan? Yes. Do I get annoyed with Jihan? Yes. Does he get annoyed with me? Fuck yeah. Everyone gets annoyed with me.
Everyone loves you, Craig. We just act like we don't like you.
Oh, no, trust me, my wife and my kids get annoyed the fuck out of me all the time. And so I'm used to it. So I piss everyone off.
What is the status on the Australian Tax Authority investigation? I guess this is before you moved to London.
If anything was going to happen, I live in Britain on an Australian passport. So if anyone thinks this is a big issue, if there was any real bloody issue, I'm on an Australian passport living here on my visa.
That isn't very necessarily interesting for me, so I'm going to skip on the details on that. But how did you make your billions? Were you rich before Bitcoin? What % of your portfolio would you say roughly is in cryptocurrency?
All right, so I made my first $20 million when I was in my 20s. And then I lost most of it, and then I made it again, and then I lost the shitload of it, and I've made it again. Now, I would say probably all but about 100 million worth are in crypto.
Question from Cody Burns. If SegWit was activated before the August fork, would you support it?
No, I would never support SegWit. I came out saying SegWit was bad. It's part of why I came out and started talking a year and a bit ago. SegWit is bad. SegWit is bad in so many different ways, it's not funny.
So there's a follow-up question to that from Daniel Kravitz. Do you think transaction malleability is important to fix? And if so, why not, kind of deal?
No. Transaction malleability is a cop-out by people to try and get other things in there and change the system drastically. You don't need transaction malleability fixed to do payment channels. You don't need it for many other things. And if you can't figure that out, then I'm sorry, you're not smart enough to. But the fact of the matter is, transaction malleability has not cost anything. Once you get onto an exchange, this idea, oh, Mt. Gox lost money because of transaction malleability. No, they did not. That was a large lump of steaming fucking shit. It was an excuse to say we got hacked, we embezzled, which I think is probably more likely, and our money's gone. Oh, malleability.
So this kind of follows up because I think the malleability fix needs to be in place for Schnorr signatures to work. I could be wrong on that. I remember hearing that Schnorr signatures you were not a big fan of. Can you explain what's better than this idea of like Schnorr signatures or maybe even some like BLS? But I think there's like even like an additional thing that you're...
They're both inefficient dogs that are wanky. Let's use a new technology because, well, it's cool type things. Basically, they can sit there and go, we need to change Bitcoin because otherwise we can't do BLS and pairing, which is wrong. and they sit there and say, we can't do group additive signatures with ECDSA, which is wrong.
Right.
So that one gets past Bitcoin, and yes, I've patented it.
Do you, from Bitburger B, do you see a future Bitcoin Cash with layer 2 functionality similar to Lightning Network that isn't sponsored by a corporation like Blockstream, but offered for free?
No.
Okay, well, that was a short answer. What, are you going to claim your Bitcoin hex? That was from Richard Hart.
What the hell's Bitcoin Hex?
I have no idea.
It's not another version of fucking Bitcoin, is it?
It sounds like another fork of Bitcoin.
I don't claim candy, diamonds, gold, platinum, bubblegum, or any of these other things. I could get money from claiming, well, I could have got money, and I know people who did, from their Bitcoin gold, or my Bitcoin candy, or my Bitcoin whatever steaming lump of shit, but I'm not going to. I have no intention to.
Alrighty.
Let's put it this way. If I do that, then yes, I get a little bit more Bitcoin. I don't need more Bitcoin, but at the same time, for me to claim Bitcoin gold and do a swap, I have to sell my Bitcoin gold to some unsuspecting rube. And I would rather not make the money than shill that shit.
So here's a question from Joshua J. Bow, and we'll probably wrap it up here with the last couple of questions. We are reliving gold's history from a curiosity to P2P means of exchange, to central issued coins by kings and figureheads, to eventually the banks and fractional reserve. Do you see Bitcoin as eventually ending up in the banks with fractional reserve, especially with the 1 megabyte limit, assuming it holds until 2021, I think is what it says, or 2024?
Okay, Bitcoin won't survive that long in core. The reason is it's got to scale, and it's got to scale massively to survive. The only way that it actually survives the halving and the halving and the halving that are coming in the next 10 years is to significantly increase fees. Now, you were saying how even with 1 Satoshi, you can start seeing basically many Bitcoin per block, right?
Many Bitcoin per block. I'm sorry, repeat that again about the 1 Satoshi.
We were talking earlier about 50 million transactions a second, or anything like that. Millions of transactions a day, right?
Yeah.
At that level, even on very small fees, miners make money.
Sure.
Now, compare that to this idea that digital gold is going to matter, and that people who have no idea about how finance works think that this store of value coin is going to be big, except it won't. There is no reason for it. Now, at the moment, it is a bubble, literally. For Bitcoin Core, unless you have use, you don't have store of value. Store of value always in history follows use.
So you're saying, well, see, I'm not necessarily, I'm not a hater on the Lightning Network. So I figure, like, personally for me, I like this idea of being able to make one on-channel transaction, or sorry, on-chain transaction, and potentially doing thousands of half-signed messages when this network becomes a little bit more robust. Do you really see no future in this kind of idea?
I see no future. And not even the technical part that I said I'd disclose later, but the other aspect of this is the legal aspect. If you're a merchant, then you're going to have to put it at risk, the same as you do with credit cards. And this, it's mine, doesn't work. Law is law. Code is not. If you get a court order, you don't have a freaking choice. The judge doesn't care.
And you're talking about,
say, I lost my key.
And you're talking about, I'm running a Lightning node, right? That's what you're talking
Yeah.
about?
No, I'm talking if you're a merchant who uses Lightning.
I mean, couldn't that be true with Bitcoin as well? I don't get it.
No, because this is the difference people don't get. Bitcoin is delivered. It is settled. That means it is a negotiable instrument. That means under the law and the provisions of full delivery, that it becomes, as a negotiable instrument, something you can't take. It is fungible because once I've given it to you, even if I got it through nefarious means, if we have not a gift but a exchange bona fide at value, it's a real contract and a real exchange, no one can go after you for that money.
But I feel like with the off-chain ideas, the second layer idea of these half pre-image messages, that's as good as gold because you can always take that and clear it. Like, so for instance, no?
But that's but the law says if you haven't cleared it, it's not yours.
Okay. But isn't that kind of subjective because you could have software that automates that, right? So, and
no,
you have unlocked.
There's already case law. It's not. The credit card industry, checking industry, it's not. You can say it should be. I don't care. Judges don't care. They can take your stuff now. I have a key. So what? Well, if you don't give me the money, the value of the Bitcoin, as a judge, I can put you in jail. I can take your property.
Well, I mean,
that's how the law works.
Well, I mean, to me, that also sounds like that miners could get in trouble for putting transactions into the blockchain because it follows the same kind of concept of it's you signed a valid transaction, but I have not yet put that in the blockchain. And if you do put that transaction in the blockchain, I mean, to me, it follows the same concept. If it doesn't, maybe you can explain how it's different.
Okay, it doesn't. You don't know what you're transferring, so you come under safe harbor type provisions. There's also a number of other things for mere exchange of information. So this is the difference. You're not actually seeing, you're sitting there going, oh, the law should say. The law doesn't matter what you think it should say. It's what has built up over hundreds of years of common law.
What's the case law that you're referencing when you say there's case law around this?
Look at some of the blog posts I put up the other day. I was referencing one of the main cases that go back to the House of Lords in 1892. Now, you can say that's old, but that is the foundation. It's the foundation of security law, both in the US and in the UK and in Australia and Canada. That case is pivotal.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie to you. I might not be smart enough to follow your logic on this one, but thank you for sharing that point. I guess I'll let.
So,
yeah.
I mean, this is the point. I'm doing a Doctor of Law degree. I've got a seminar coming up in September that I got to put together, and one of the law lords here in Britain went to Leicester, and there are a number of barristers and everything like that that are quite influential that'll be coming up. And I can explain in legal terms how this is. And once people start understanding, the law starts moving. The law may be slow, but sitting there going, we're above the law, doesn't work. Like it or not. Cryptographic, they don't care. And you can do what I did back in 2003 and tell a judge how he was wrong. And I got slapped with a nice fine and things like that because I said, with all due respect, Your Honour, it's not only that you're wrong, that you're fucking wrong, which didn't go down well, strangely enough.
All right.
Yeah, I have learned to not swear to judges anymore.
Yeah, I think going back to the meme of Craig Wright, it kind of completes you. I wouldn't want you to take that away from yourself. I like the personality, which is Craig Wright, and I don't want that to ever go away.
I don't plan on getting rid of it, but no. I'm not going to stand in front of a judge and tell them where to fuck off anymore. I'll pay lawyers to do that for me and let them get in trouble.
You know, I don't necessarily know if I have any more questions for you. I feel like we got a good overview. You talked about stuff that you were willing to talk about, the stuff that's a little bit maybe more sensitive, like with the Satoshi origin. We kind of left out. Is there anything else that I'm missing that's interesting about you that you would want to share? What else are you doing in the space? Is there anything else?
I don't know. What sort of other things are you looking at? I have to negotiate with my wife to get new cars. I'm still trying. I want a McLaren, but she doesn't think I need a McLaren. She's trying to argue that 4 cars is probably enough and I can't drive them all at once. I'm trying to argue that Jay Leno has over 50.
So now Jay Leno is not even a billionaire, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So you should definitely be able to convince her on that.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think I should be able to.
Sounds good. I mean, I can't deny your boat parties and your lifestyle seems to be fun. So I guess I'll look forward to seeing you in a McLaren pretty soon, right?
I'm trying.
Okay. Good luck on that. You have to convince wifey that it's a good purchase, right?
Yes. Happy wife, happy life. So it's negotiations.
So what
I just haven't found what she wants enough to get me out of McLaren yet.
What did what does your family, friends, close friends before you got into the Bitcoin space think of your personality and your kind of niche, place in the Bitcoin space? Have they ever commented on it, or is there anything interesting there?
I won't bring my family in. That's the one thing I won't do. Sorry.
Okay.
Love my family enough to keep them out of the shit.
What's next for Craig Wright?
Tomorrow I'm going on holidays.
Any besides holiday, just any overlapping big ideas that you're excited about that you'd want to share as well?
I'm looking forward to going down to Kenya. We've got a bit of a chat and everything like that with a few ministers and other people in Kenya. I want to start actually getting some educational projects in place. I've already started talking with some different Caribbean islands about basically instigating training in code. So we'll put people up and train them to be programmers and other things, which I'll fund. Sure.
All right. And then for the really juicy stuff, anything else on the claim of Satoshi? Are you completely not saying you're Satoshi anymore? Is this something that was temporary? Is it really a group of 3 people and you're one of the 3? Anything like
I'm not going to give you any knowledge.
Okay.
More than I'm some obnoxious bastard who got into Bitcoin and actually held his and mined it and went, fuck you, Toddler, because you should have. That's all you're getting.
What?
See, if Mr. Todd had actually done something and thought about keeping it, or even poor little Lukey Jr. there, they wouldn't be begging for money all the time.
Gotcha. All right. Well, Craig, I think I'm done. I appreciate your time. It was good getting to know you and chat with you. So
I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, I think the nonce has been found, and this block has been sealed. So we'll call it. We'll call it. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
See you later.
Bye.
I basically do a blind signing where you don't.
Okay. Wow. So I didn't get anything juicy out of that. That was, pretty, calm. I was trying to get him to say something about him being Satoshi. He wouldn't crack. I would say this wasn't necessarily a nothing burger interview. I mean, maybe it was a little bit interesting for someone who really wants to analyze what what Craig said and what he said, at least the future of Bitcoin Cash. I mean, obviously he's really bullish on Bitcoin Cash, and he has stuff up his sleeve. Whether or not that comes to whether or not that comes out or not, we'll have to wait and see. I think it was kind of interesting that he wasn't willing to budge on pretty much any of the points on why Bitcoin might be better than Bitcoin Cash right now, or the characteristics. His characteristics of Bitcoin Cash were pretty much whatever I say it is, in my opinion, which is okay because this is a very subjective space, I would say. But Richard Hart says we're all Satoshis except Craig. Yeah, oh, that's funny. Yeah, it's hard to know. Like, so if you haven't seen, I'm gonna put up a video that I think everyone should watch that really breaks down Craig Wright and this guy named David, like Dave Heelman. So I would say watch it. You can believe what you want. I don't know if it's true or not. It's just very interesting. There's a lot of, like, I think Richard Hart's even talked about this a little bit on his show with Doug Polk. So that's also, something that you can check out. But the real eye-opener kind of interview, and let me open it up real quick because I can show y'all. I closed out all my messaging stuff because I didn't want to get pinged while I was doing this. Yeah, so I'm just gonna play this actually, and then you'll see.
My name's Jason Bond, and
what I'm talking about. So let me add this window real quick. Okay.
As we think it was. See, Satoshi Nakamoto is the pseudonym behind the individual who back in 2008 published a paper that later became the basis for Bitcoin. And since that time, everybody asked the question.
So let me quickly just tell you about this video, and let me show you who it is. It's a YouTuber Law, and Satoshi Nakamoto sued. This guy, if you here, I'll make it a little bit bigger so you can see it. This guy pretty much brought up a bunch of very interesting facts on the origin of this guy named Dave Kleeman, and whether or not this is true or not, I don't know. This could be all part of game theory on trying to prove he was Satoshi, but wasn't really. But I would definitely say check out this video. If this is true, it really is kind of disturbing on some of the kind of origin stories of Satoshi Nakamoto, and I think a lot of people are hoping this isn't true, but I don't know, it's interesting stuff. Just food for thought. It's pretty much like saying that Craig Wright, if this is true, then he's really kind of screwed over this guy named Dave. Now I don't know. I can't really say if this is true or not, but feel free to check it out. Let's see if there's any more people talking in the chat before I close this off. Dead men don't tell tales. I agree. So this could have been like the game theory aspect, Richard, where I was saying, like, he saw a keen opportunity. Now, I mean, Craig didn't want to comment on any of the juicy kind of questions. This was all pretty standard, pretty much just all kind of business as usual, in my opinion, where he was talking about Bitcoin Cash being better than Bitcoin and stuff like that, and maybe rightfully so, maybe not. I wasn't really necessarily interested in that conversation. So ultimately, I was here to try to get some of the origin story that didn't really work out. Me trying to stroke his ego a little bit maybe didn't work. I don't know. I thought maybe I could schmooze him over and then get some juicy information for all of us, but it didn't work. I know a lot of people here were saying I was boring or taking it light on him. Well, it's for a reason. And I think ultimately we had a couple interesting talking points, even though we didn't get into the juicy stuff. He's pretty aware of the things he should and should not say, because there's probably like a lot of litigation going on with some of the things I asked about. So all he did was a good PR move to go viral, but in a very negative way. You know, I don't necessarily agree. I don't think this really hurt or helped Craig Wright. I mean, this stuff's already public. I don't really have like a big podcast. I think people are a little bit like worried. Like, I know like a couple people reached out to me, or at least one significant person reached out and said, "Don't do it. You're just going to give them more attention." I was like, dude, relax. I mean, that's like the opposite of freedom. I want to do what I want. So let's see. Anyone else have anything else to say? He did a good job on saying nothing. Yeah, well, it was a lot of wait and see, right? He couldn't make any progress with actual innovation or anything else that's good or won't. To summarize his BCH argument for greatness, yeah, I was actually surprised that his answer to why Lightning wasn't good was, oh, you'll just have to wait and see. To me, that sounds like nothing. I'm actually a pretty big fan of the idea of Lightning Network. So my big concern with it is if blocks remain small and we don't do something like with sidechains, then potentially you're going to have a very big barrier to close out a bad channel with someone who's trying to be malicious. I don't really feel like I understood his concerns with Lightning, and I don't feel like he would tell them in detail. Maybe one, he doesn't know, or two, he doesn't want to divulge that. And I'm thinking maybe it's closer to the first, but who knows? All right. Well, this has been a fun block time podcast. I think we're going to probably get more into it with Mike Casey as well, with maybe a more regular show. So, all right. Thanks, guys. I guess this is the second Nazis that's been found. Thanks for watching.